The second day. For most of my time in the second leg of the journey, I was laid upon the top of the caravan as I was unable to move much after my encounter. Davy insisted I was faking the impact of the injury to avoid walking like my parents. But after threats of my father leaving the caravan along with the guards, who were more sympathetic, Davy's hand was forced. The day seemed to radiate with nervous energy, and the sun somehow had beaten the clouds back for short amounts of time, shining hot beams upon everyone. Howls of laughter were heard in the distance, prompting Jerian to become nervous. He kept speaking of shiny laughs piercing the daytime air. We walked for many hours before Jerian showed more signs of degeneration. He began to sweat, more than anyone else. He chuckled softly to himself about nothing. Eventually Sagan confronted him on these matters. The two guards had stopped the entire caravan from moving, as they were in front. "The hell is wrong with you, Jerian?" asked Sagan in his thick English accent. Jerian only laughed in response. I saw Sagan begin to approach Jerian closer, his arms trying to simultaneously calm Jerian and get his weapon away from him. All in one fluid motion, Jerian let out howling laughter much like the kind we were hearing from the brittle forest. Throwing his weapon into a striking motion, he hit Sagan across the cheek of his face, sending him sprawling to the ground. Before my father could reach the two of them, Jerian turned tail and ran through the woods. Now, you must understand the horror of this. There was no way you could run through the forest without stabbing and impaling yourself on the numerous spikes that littered the trees. As Jerian ran further into the forest, we could see blood come gushing out everywhere the brittle spikes touched. Jerian was unfazed and ran until he was out of sight of the caravan, his long howling laughs dissipating in the rapidly coming night. Davy was forced to give my father his own weapon, to now serve as a replacement for Jerian. The rest of the night passed eventually, thankfully, but throughout the night Sagan swore he could hear the howling laughter of Jerian through the forest. The third day. Even though my chest radiated pain and had developed some strange greenish coloration, I decided to listen to Davy's insistence that I was fine enough to walk. Numerous small annoyances happened throughout the day. One of our wheel axles broke. Davy saw hallucinations for over an hour. He kept insisting that there was a town in the woods. Sagan had to hold Davy back from jumping into the woods. Mother began hearing German voices from her homeland and was sobbing for more than 3 hours. Our food supplies were drastically lowered. How this was achieved, no one knows. I kept telling my father that it had been the monster from the first night, though he just rubbed his eyes and told me to stay behind him in the caravan. Looking back now, I'm surprised how he never beat me like many fathers from the coal mine did. He was a patient, kind man. The day seemed to never end, the sun going at a snail's pace across the sky. By the time it was finally time to stop for the night, the first thunderstorms were finally coming in. Thunderstorms seemed common in the woods, and not in the surrounding area. It seemed to be that the Stilask Woods had its own weather independent from the towns around the woods. Thunderstorms were dangerous in the woods, as Davy told me. Visibility is lowered significantly, and the howling wind makes it harder to hear anything. Thankfully, it seemed if this was the perfect time to strike. The Potvori in the forest had decided it was too easy. We seemed to have been spared from horrors that night, but the Stilask Woods would make up for that on the fourth night. The fourth day. You could immediately tell this day was going to be bad. The horizon and the sky above was filled in a blood-red haze. The sky seemed unfamiliar and alien, like we had stepped into a different world overnight. The air echoed with faraway screams, and I wondered if some faraway trader was meeting his fate further into the woods. The amount that had perished on this trail was done in vain, however. The sides of the path were littered with backpacks, cans, whatever traders thought they could throw away to lighten their load. We scavenged what we could from the side of the trail. The sides of the road seemed to form some horrific wall of old fallen items. The trees' illusion seemed heightened too during the red haze. Since all the trees had for branches were sharp, brittle points, they intersected in random ways, forming an illusion which made depth perception hard. It almost looked like the air was cut into little, strangely shaped squares by the spikes. After walking for hours, Sagan stopped the caravan. "Stop! Do you hear that?" We all didn't hear anything, but listening closer, we heard a faint buzzing sound. We travelled for more than an hour before the sound seemed to increase. Whatever it was getting closer. Not 15 minutes must have passed after that, but suddenly they descended. Giant black wasps the size of baseballs came down on the caravan. Everyone's first reaction was to swing their arms around, trying to shake off the giant wasp creatures. Eventually, everyone had been stung at least once, and my father yelled, "Cover yourselves with the blankets!" We quickly understood what my father meant, and everyone covered themselves. The creatures didn't attempt to stab through the blankets, which I'm sure they could have. They decided to rub their bodies against the thin layer separating us. All we could do was lay there, helpless. My mother began sobbing after 20 minutes, and we still waited. It was another hour before they finally ascended. By that time, it was time to stop for the night. Everyone was covered in these thick green sores which oozed pus. It didn't seem to have poisoned us, but it was horrific all the same.